I'm Andreas Voniatis, and this is SEO in 2023 Additional Insights.
Andreas, what is your additional insight for SEO in 2023?
Well, so many SEOs make decisions based on averages, but they don't look at the variation. And being that SEO is data rich, SEO should take a statistical approach to SEO. And this is all detailed in my book, Data Driven SEO.
Okay, now I think that many SEOs say that they're data driven, but I'm sure that it would mean different things to different people. So what do you think it should mean?
Well, I'll start with what it shouldn't mean at the very base level. It doesn't mean data entry. What it does mean is it means not just looking at the average, but looking at the variation. So in statistical speak, that includes the standard deviation, because averages can be highly deceiving. So, not just looking, obviously there are situations where you get data from Google Search Console and you're just looking, obviously in those situations, then you have no choice to analyze your existing data. But you can still do things like looking at the average, looking at the standard deviation. Now, this is all a bit theoretical right now, but just to give you a more practical, exciting example, is that did you know that if you track the standard deviation of your annual competitor rankings, you can see immediately whether your position changes are down to a Google algorithm update, competitor action, or otherwise?
If that was a question for me, I'm not sure if I actually knew that.
It's not a question, but that's just an example of how you can apply data science.
And you used the phrase standard deviation a few times there, and I'm sure many SEOs will have heard of that, but not necessarily a thought about what it actually meant in terms of its practical use in SEO. So thanks to my friend Google, standard deviation is a measure of how dispersed the data is in relation to the mean. So it obviously means that you're looking at different results that deviate from more than from what you would expect the average to be. So how do you actually practically use that in things like you mentioned, like competitor analysis or discovering why rankings have altered significantly?
Well, SEOs probably are using it more than they think. Like, for example, if you look at the split A/B platforms that have been popularized by people like SearchPilot, it uses the standard deviation. In fact, if impressions are or traffic is more than 2 standard deviations above what it was before, then the split test result is significant. And there's many other applications. For example, the average, if you like, tells you what's normal. But if something goes 1 or 2 standard deviations above or below what was normal, then you know something significant has happened. And that's why I really cannot start advocating the need for data science to really find out what's going on in your SEO.
So I think you alluded to the fact that you can tell by the amount of standard deviation what was likely to have resulted in the significant change. So how can you do that?
Well, what you need to do is you need to look at your existing data, and you need to look at the average, and you need to look at the standard deviation, which tells you like how consistent is the data. How consistent is it around the average? Is it quite close, i.e. a low standard deviation, or is it widely dispersed, a very, very high standard deviation? So obviously there's formulas online in Google, and if you use Python, you can have you can code formulas to actually get those figures. And so by tracking these values over time, whether it's the number of internal links or your ranks versus your competitors, things like that, this can all be automated. And by tracking it over time, you can see actually whether it's changing. So, for example, if you're doing a split test and you've got test control and you want to see whether the test is actually giving a significant impact, i.e. the experiment is working or totally tanking, what you would do is you would look to see whether the averages of the test control are different, but most importantly, you want to make sure that the difference in the averages are more than 2 standard deviations apart, whatever that figure is that you calculated beforehand. Bit hard to visual, I know.
It is. So is relatively manual data science not going to get surpassed by AI? So SEOs aren't going to have to know about these things in the future?
That's a good question. I think in terms of split testing applications, possibly, but you're always going to need, I think AI will basically automate all the tasks that we're not built to do. Humans are creative, so I don't think AI is going to get rid of SEOs anytime soon. I think what it is going to do, it's going to force us to do more of the things we're built to do, which is create solutions and create, come up with ideas and understand and connect SEO to business outcomes and things like that. That's something that AI is not going to do very well anytime soon. Even when you look at ChatGPT and how it's being used by SEOs, ironically, to create content, ChatGPT tends to come out with a load of generic stuff that probably wouldn't rank on the first page, and in some cases is factually incorrect.
Yeah, great points. So staying on being creative, more creative as SEOs, and using your human brain to decide on probably what is the most appropriate thing to do from a strategic or business perspective. So from that lens, shall we look at content marketing? So how can data science really help to funnel great decision making when it comes to content marketing?
Well, SEOs are already looking at the top 10 SERPs. They're looking at the sections that are common to the top 10 ranking content when they want to find out what it takes to rank page 1 for a target search query. Where data science can help is it can actually automate a lot of this when it comes to trying to understand the search intent of keywords. There's already tools out there that compare the search engine results for a couple of keywords. What data science can do, it can make this a lot more consistent and reliable, because if you imagine, if you're trying to compare 100, if you're trying to find out or cluster 100 keywords by search intent, i.e. by the search engine results, it's going to be very manual and error prone if you try to do it yourself. Whereas what data science can do is it can do it at scale and in an automated way that a human can possibly, or an SEO consultant can possibly hope to do in, say, half a day or less.
So obviously Majestic has a lot of great data from a link perspective. So how do you use a data science driven approach to harness all this information and actually build an optimal link building strategy from all this data?
That's a really, really good question. So in my book, one of the chapters is on authority. One of the things it covers is, what makes a good link. So using Majestic data, you could absolutely apply data science techniques to find out, what would be a good value for the Majestic link metric, for example, like the trust flow. You could find out, what is the average trust flow? What is the standard deviation of that trust flow for your sector? And then therefore, if let's just say that the average trust flow is 36 and the standard deviation is 10, then you know that if Google was to find a backlink with, say, 2 standard deviations above, say 55 or above, then it's very likely that Google would think that link is valuable, and then therefore you could use your Majestic data to look for links that have a trust flow of 55 or above. You see?
Is there any particular software that you would recommend, apart from Majestic, for doing great analysis of not only reviewing links, but other data that you can use to power your SEO?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask on software, because I'm one of these crazy people that code everything. and build their own tools. So,
I mean, any data science tools that you would recommend?
Well, I mean, if you want to get started in data science, you would want to have a Jupyter notebook. This is all open source. It runs on any machine, Mac or Windows, and Python again is open source. So it's really just doing the hard yards of taking a basic course in Python and in Pandas, which is the library that is used to analyze data in Python. And also, obviously, if you can take a basic course in statistics to understand, how statistical tests work and things like that, that will really, as it did for me, give you a new way of seeing SEO and all the possibilities that it opens up for you.
Okay, great. Okay, so basic course in statistics, Python you mentioned there as well. I mean, if you were to sit down with someone, with an SEO, who hadn't really thought much about data science in the past, are there like 3 key areas of data science that you would actually pinpoint as areas that they need to know to begin with, just to understand the basics?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the SEO teams that I train, they tend to want to get the code now to do certain tasks. So, I would say the top 3 are keyword clustering, forecasting search volume demands or traffic, and the other one is that escapes me now, but certainly those 2. Oh, and split A/B tests. That's incredibly popular with SEOs wanting to move into Python.
Superb. Okay, so keyword clustering as in just obviously understanding the related keyword phrases and which keyword phrases you should be optimizing for the same page, essentially.
Yes, indeed.
Well, you shared what SEO should be doing in 2023, so now let's talk about what SEO shouldn't be doing. So what's something that's seductive in terms of time, but ultimately counterproductive? What's something that SEOs shouldn't be doing in 2023?
So what they shouldn't be doing, and I've been guilty of that myself, many years ago, is making decisions purely on average, because the average can be highly deceitful.
Okay. So I understand this is all relating back to data science. In terms of fluctuations, I just want to dig into this a little bit deeper, because obviously many things can impact fluctuations in data. It could be seasonality, it could be popularity of different items, it could be Google algorithm updates, or certainly something else. The nice thing about looking at averages is that you don't get swayed by sudden changes in standard deviations. So how do you know which sudden changes to look out for and to pay attention to, and which to decide that, actually it's just something that happens as a one-off, so I'm not going to be that concerned about it?
I guess if you're pushed for time in terms of doing all the number crunching, including statistical measures such as standard deviation, it really then comes down to experience and knowing your data. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if you know the average is, say, 35, and you know it tends to never go outside the sort of range between 30 and 40, and then you see an average kick out at 42, then you know something significant has happened. That's if you don't want to do the homework. Okay,
but bad idea by the sound of it, and you certainly always make sure that you have to do the homework.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've got the tools now, they're free, so there really is no excuse. I'm not saying don't be creative. Be creative, ask questions of the data, but do the work.
Andreas Voniatis is founder at Artios, and you can find him over at artios.io. Andreas, thanks so much for adding your additional insight to SEO in 2023.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
I've been your host, David Bain, and you've been listening to SEO in 2023 Additional Insights, a majestic series that complements the original SEO in 2023 podcast, video series, and book. Find out more over at SEOin2023.com.